Hey guys, hope you are all having a great day so far. In 1848, the discovery of gold nuggets in Sacramento Valley sparked one of the most significant events in American history during its first half in the 19th century. As the news of this discovery spread, thousands and thousands of prospective gold miners traveled by land and sea to San Francisco in a rush. This rush was so monumental that by the end of 1849, the non-native population of the California Territory was something along the lines of 100,000 people, compared to the pre-1848 figure which had it less than just 1,000 people. A total of $2 billion worth of precious metal was extracted from the area. The impacts of this discovery can be argued as having directly shaped the future of California into what it is today. The population boom alone in the wake of the rush permanently altered the landscape after all. It propelled significant industrial and agricultural development, things that can still be observed in this very day. You might be wondering why exactly we are talking about a historical event that happened nearly 200 years ago, but context is everything. You see, with the way global events are taking shape, we are about to encounter a similar development with the most important resource known to life itself, water. That's right. Where back then we had the poor, middle and high class all working to meet their own needs in the gold rush, today's next rush excludes everyone but the select few investment funds, banks, pension funds and insurers who stand to make billions of dollars out of leaving people with less to drink. Today's video is heavily inspired by a great investigative journalism piece published by Bloomberg. It was supposed to come out yesterday but I got distracted as well as some problems with YouTube which have now been resolved. Before we get started, I want to take a quick second to invite you all over to my Discord. If you have been looking for accurate signals for entry and exits, look no further than my own Discord, where we provide all of that and a lot more. Come join us if you are interested in participating. The Discord is free to join and will be linked in the comments down below. Let's get started with today's topic, which is perhaps one of the most important videos I have ever produced, for it lays out the blueprint for what is to begin increasing in frequency across the nation, sadly enough. So let's start with the fact that California has a temporary reprieve, meaning California's 3-year drought is on the verge of ending thanks to a string of powerful Pacific storms in recent months. By June, it is estimated that the conditions across most of the state will be the best since 2020. I know California has been mired with catastrophic fires for a long while, many which have devastated the lives of thousands of people. Last year alone, 1,500 domestic wells went dry statewide, and the state auditor reported almost 1 million Californians had no safe drinking water in their homes. Most people in small towns such as WeBull have to drink bottled water only. But as I said early, this winter's record storms provided a welcomed break from the drought, lifting water levels across the state significantly. However, it will take decades of wet winters to refill the aquifer, for droughts are now only a part of California's water woes. The other part of the problem is now manifesting on the side of the roads, which are covered in dense thickets of almond, pistachio and walnut orchards. These are permanent crops, because they need copious year-round irrigation over the course of 30-year lifespans. The owners of these unmarked groves have been a mystery for many individuals and even government officials. You see, when you drive long enough, you will start to notice that every couple of miles, there are these huge U-shaped nozzles sticking up, spouting water extracted from deeper reserves of water on the soil. Because the prodigious pumping is constant, it has dropped the water table in cities like San Joaquin, which is California's food belt between Sacramento and the south of Bakersfield. The decline has deprived many shallower wells belonging to small farmers and poor communities. There's now a saying that goes, the deeper the pockets, the deeper the wells, because the more money you have the more leverage you have over the water, and it's a very zero-sum game when it comes to California, because smaller people will be left without that pivotal resource to continue operating. So a lot of research has been done to uncover who exactly is behind this new development, and unsurprisingly enough, the invisible hand belonged to a very long line of investors, all the way from New York to foreign ones located in Toronto, Zurich and other financial capitals. Some of the world's largest investment banks, pension funds and insurers, including Manulife Financial's John Hancock, TIAA and UBS, have been depleting California's underwater to grow high-value nuts, which are leaving less drinking water for the surrounding communities according to Bloomberg Green investigation. Wall Street is coming for California's most important resource, its water, and they are going to be absolutely relentless. The impacts on this are going to be monumental, and you can expect big businesses to be the ones to benefit since they are pals with Wall Street, whereas small businesses are going to get shafted once again. Guys, think about it for 1 minute. Did you know that Central Valley alone is the source of 40% of America's fruits and nuts? Do you guys think this is just a coincidence at all? Wall Street has found their new rush, and instead of a precious metal, it is the most precious resource, and the story gets even crazier when looking at the details. Since the year 2010, 6 major investors have quadrupled their farmland under management in California, to almost 120,000 acres in all, which is equivalent to a third of all the cropland in Connecticut, a wild statistic that be very eye-opening and alarming to everyone. But despite epical drought, these companies have been fueling the growth of permanent crops, disregarding some of the most basic principles of sustainable investing. In other words, regardless of the conditions of California, these investors are going ham. Talk about buying the dip. They are welcoming every drop in valuation because they understand that long-term, this investment will give them a huge returns, almost similar to the criminal growth of corporate-owned real estate housing, which by the way I am preparing many videos on because that in itself is also going out of control. Back to topic. Bloomberg found that since the start of 2019, 1 of every 6 of the deepest wells in the San Joaquin Valley has been drilled on land owned or managed by outside investors. Of the landowners that have drilled the greatest number of deep wells since 2019, 2 of the top 3 are institutional investors TIAA and the Public Sector Pension Investment Board of Canada. This rush of water is an outgrowth of a decades-long bet on farmland by investors who see food cultivation as an asset class virtually assured of appreciating in a warming, more populous world. Globally speaking, investors and agribusinesses have acquired about 163 million acres of farmland in more than 100 countries in the past 20 years. The land grab has given rise to a grab of an even scarcer global commodity, which is water. In a bid to ensure thriving investment portfolios, some of the world's largest financial entities have amassed control over lakes, rivers and underground aquifers in places like California and ranging all the way to even Africa, Australia and South America. This has given them disproportional roles in managing the endangered resource that's the basis of life on Earth. The trend, which is what it is, a trend, not a thing happening just in one spot in California, is contributing to shifting hydrological patterns that could stand to permanently disrupt communities' access to fresh water. Local population are paying the price of drained wells, high water bills and contaminated water supplies. In smoother words, water is becoming a source of greater demand, and Wall Street is working night and day to privatize as much of it as possible, expanding their never-ending reach to a point where people, usually lower and middle class, are going to be directly affected by it in negative ways. You happen to be in a smaller town, get ready to pay more for water, which will be yielded in less and even dangerous quality. Don't like it? Too bad, because Wall Street knows this game very well and have already pocketed the politicians promising changes. Let's go back to the topic. Deep wells, which is what these investors are focused on building, drain shallower wells, a law of hydrodynamics that's exacerbated social inequities in California. The impact of overpumping is also permanent, meaning it cannot be reversed through a natural process or engineered one yet. This current vicious practice has caused much of Central California to sink at varying rates. In fact, in the past decade alone, parts of the San Joaquin Valley have dropped as much as a foot per year, an insane statistic. Subsidence, which is the proper term for sinking, has damaged a lot of the infrastructure in California, including bridges, roads and canals, which you can 100% bet will cost hundreds of billions to repair, but as you guys know, Wall Street privatizes the profits and simply passes the check to the taxpayer money to fix the problems they themselves cause. The aquifers are also irreparable, meaning many groundwater basins, once entirely drained, never recover their former storage capacity. So, as you might guess, most California nut growers are still local farmers, the small folk like you and me. About 90% of the state's 7,600 almond farms are actually family-owned. As temperatures have warmed in the past couple of years, institutional investors have proliferated. In 2010, Hancock Agricultural Investment Group was noted as telling its institutional clients that permanent crops would offer attractive returns as well as provide a hedge against inflation. Nut farming is largely mechanized, which means labor costs are pretty low. When the nut boom grew in the 2010s, the state of California's almond acreage exploded 50% and plantings of pistachios expanded almost 90%. As you might guess, institutional investors piled in like retail investors did with GameStop in 2021. From 2015 to 2019, TIAA directed at least $258 million into 8,600 acres of California nuts, grapes and row crops. Hancock plunked down more than $67 million of investor funds on at least 6,500 acres of permanent crops and other produce. Gladstone Land Corporation invested $518 million to buy 23,000 acres of mostly almonds and pistachios, which now it leases to local farmers. That's right, you know how Wall Street is buying all the housing to make permanent rents of us all? Well, they are doing the same thing with farmland as well. Other institutional buyers include Allstate Insurance, Prudential Financial, and even the Mormon Church, whose farmland reserve has invested about $60 million in some 1,500 acres of California nut orchards since 2016. That's right, the Church of Mormons, which doesn't pay taxes, is investing tens of millions of dollars in acres of nut orchards, a disgusting reality for even the most religious of folk here. It's inconceivable that the church will be allowed to invest like a Wall Street business yet retain many of the benefits of operating with tax exempts, but that's a trigger topic for another video. So, looking a bit into the regulatory side of things, in 2014, California became the last Western state to regulate groundwater, because of course it would be the last to be forced to regulate on this. They now have the so-called Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which requires balancing recharge and extraction in all state aquifers by 2040 to stabilize the water table at levels that won't cause undesirable results such as land subsidence and dried-out domestic wells. But no well-intended act can last long enough in America. With the dry conditions and the surface water growing in price, when even available at all, nut tree investors faced a stark choice: drill or cease to exist. Instead of the act forcing the change into one of positive sustainability, a get it while you can race to the boom of the aquifer broke out, which is why the title for this video is The Water Rush, in similar contrast to that of the Gold Rush. From 2014 through 2022, at least 70 wells have been drilled on land now owned and managed by the biggest institutional investors in California nuts. The majority of these wells descend at least 1,000 feet underground, which is twice the median depth of all the state's farming wells drilled in the same period. The wells of investor-owned land deploy wider diameter pipes, making it capable of extracting 3 times more water on average. Institutional investors knew that regulations would come, which is why they were so aggressive. In fact, Hancock published a report warning that their managed almond and pistachio orchards would be tens of thousands of acre-feet short of water sustainability plans were fully implemented. By then, most institutional investors assumed the investments would have long paid off. The reason why I mentioned this is because this practice quickly reminded me of that of oil companies, who were running experiments on the heating of the globe but kept it secret for as long as they could. They knew regulations would eventually be passed, same as cigarette companies, and they needed to quickly expand as possible so that once regulations would become a check on them, they would have the infrastructure needed to succeed and continue operating the same. The Bloomberg investigation did some interviews, which I found interesting because across California, farmers were quoted at stating their disbelief at how quickly Wall Street took over, saying things like, "All of a sudden, we had this influx of landowners who weren't farmers and didn't know or care about the history of land use, and behind the scenes, the farmers were lamenting how someone had to quickly come and put a stop to this." Many companies have been working hard to avert lawsuits, especially Hancock, who agreed to throttle its deep pumps and purchase deliveries of surface water from specifically allowed areas. Though many of these investing companies have been halted from enhancing their expansions, they are fighting hard to invest in politicians that will soften regulations, or find loopholes by which they can continue expanding. The Great Water Rush is here to stay, as Wall Street's eyes are now glimmering at the prospect of leveraging their infinite piles of cash to rip off small business and small towns of the most important source to exist. I bet you $1 million that behind this push, you have big publicly traded corporations in the farming business who stand to supplement the death of all these small businesses, further destroying competition and consolidating their infinite power. And though we covered California in particular, do remember this is happening across the globe. Just as we have foreign companies taking our precious water resource, we are doing the same with other countries. The few are aiming to treat farmland like the housing market, buying as much as possible to make renters of us all, and exhausting water resources to artificially drive up demand and prices. The topics on this video are very alarming and everyone should be well aware of these things. Make sure to discuss these things with your family and friends to grow awareness of this issue, because I strongly believe we are going to start seeing this come up more and more over time. I want to thank Peter Waldman, Sindhu Jarangarajan and Mark Chediak for their amazing investigative journalism. Their interviews with farmers in California really opened up my eyes and curiosity as much as it opened yours. Thank you all for making it to the end of this video, I hope you guys liked it. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments, and for the love of sweet tendies, come join the free Discord already. I see so much appetite for profits in day traders and investors alike, but you guys will not simply click the link below, which will grant you access to see for yourself that everything I am telling is true. With all that said, I got a real estate video dropping soon this week, so stay tuned for that. Have an amazing rest of your day and to the moon.